Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to episode 16 of Resistance TV. My name is Turtle. I am the host this week of the show. We're going to be dealing with Monterey Peninsula's resources for the disenfranchised. Essentially, what we're doing is talking with a couple of local resources. Pastor Jim from Pastor Word Ministries is here today to talk with us about their program and a couple of other programs that Pastor Word Ministries is involved with. He's been doing this for about 8 years, and it's an amazing program. I am founder and CEO of Humble Beginnings in Medicine World, and my name is Turtle. Basically, what I do is provide a conduit between client and resource here on the Monterey Peninsula. In the last 6 years that I've been doing this, it has actually been one of those things that is a growing, living thing. Several resources here on the peninsula are available for the disenfranchised, whether you're substance abuse recovery, the homeless, or residentially challenged, the legally challenged, parolees, probationers, or a domestic violence survivor. All of these disenfranchised are involved sometimes in more than just one group. And because of that, I've discovered that these resources that we have available here on the peninsula are very, very successful in what they do, but unfortunately there's no way to know how to access them for my clients. They have very limited resources for advertising or for media, and so it's basically done word of mouth, which is where my foundation, Humble Beginnings, comes into play. Pastor Word Ministries has been doing this, as I said earlier, for over 8 years, and Pastor Jim is the key in a couple of other programs that have been started here on the peninsula. The Gathering for Women, for example, and One Starfish are a couple of programs that he's involved with. And we might as well go ahead and introduce him now. So, Pastor Jim, welcome to Resistance TV.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarifications, yes. I'm not officially involved with Gathering for the Women.
Yeah. Okay.
Just have an appreciation for what they do, and we work closely with them, but they are a separate entity altogether.
Okay. Great. So, tell us a little bit more about Pastor Word Ministries and Breakfast in the Park.
Okay. Well, it meets on, like Turtle said, on Saturday mornings, basically about from 8:30 to 10, and we normally meet at the barbecue picnic area in Alistero Park, which would be on Pearl Street, just after the first bridge, and before you get to the baseball diamond. So we're really right where the right field fence.
Nice, yeah. And what exactly do you provide for the disenfranchised?
Well, we give them first a hearty breakfast.
Nice.
We have tater tots that are cooked there on the scene, and scrambled eggs, and then sandwiches to go, and anything from peanut butter and jelly and cream cheese. And we got turkey meat and cheese and all kinds of things to put on it. And then we have volunteers who come. And we're never quite sure what they're going to bring, but like last week, there were a bunch of cupcakes. And we have also a regular item is baked beans and tortillas. But we have a lot of times fruit, and we'll have pastries. We have some fried meat. We have a lot of different volunteers who help out. And like the National Charity League, it's their mothers and daughters who come. We've had a group from pretty regular van comes from Robert Louis Stevenson School, high school, and it's usually about 7 to 10 that come. We've had different churches come at times. Monterey Church does a real good job of supporting us, and we've had Shoreline volunteers at times. We have a group that comes on the fourth Saturday of each month, the Ark in the Park from Carmel Presbyterian Church, and they bring personal hygiene items and tarps and stuff like that. We have a whole bunch of volunteers, but I'd like to kind of explain a little bit just about the origin and how we got our name.
Absolutely.
Kate Snyder is a real good friend of mine. Her husband and I were Gideons together. And Gideons are the ones who place Bibles in hotels and motels.
Right. And
yeah, right. and also in schools. We hand out testaments at schools and stuff. So anyway, I've known Kate for quite a long time, and I refer to her as Sister Kate, and I'm Brother Jim. That's because of the Gideons. And anyway, she was getting, and still doing, she gets bread from a bakery, day old bread from a bakery in Seaside, and takes it over to Meals on Wheels in Pacific Grove. And one time, the Lord kind of laid it on her a vision that, you know, she could be helping the homeless, and by feeding them this day old bread. And she dwelled on it for a while, and then we also went to the same church, and she was telling me that, you know, in the group, that this is what the Lord had told her. And so about 4 or 5 months later, actually it was a Memorial Weekend of '09 is when it started. And I came on board about 3 weeks after that. And we were meeting then at the Recreation Trail, right across from McDonald's, there by Window on the Bay.
Window by the Bay.
Right. And we weren't seeing hardly any homeless. And we were mainly seeing tourists. And so we would give them some coffee and a sandwich if they wanted, and give them information what to go see. And, but when we saw a homeless person, we said, well, I'd tell them, pass the word. We're here every Saturday.
Right.
And so that's kind of how we got our name. And then we got incorporated. And then my wife started helping out about 2 or 3 months after that. And she was very observant, and she noticed that a lot of the people needed socks. Yeah. Sure. And then we didn't really have a means to get socks. We weren't a 501c3 by any means by that time. It was just all whatever we could scrap together. Sure. And a friend of mine, Brian Bajari, Pastor Brian, and I know his dad, Jim Bajari, very, very well. We go back a long ways. Very good friend. The Lord kind of put on his heart to go out and raise money to get socks. Sure. But then he didn't have any place to distribute the socks. And somehow he heard about us, and he has what they call a small church. They met in their house, and bunch of them came, and that's how we got Bob and Lisa Holden. Right. And they've been with us ever since. Yeah. And so then that just kind of moved. You know, we saw socks, and then we saw, well, there's a need for clothing too. Right. You know, and so I had connections at Yellow Brick Road, and I was able to get them to give us some clothing on a regular basis. And then the Holdens live in Carmel, and I live in Seaside, so it was a lot easier. I convinced them to go and get the clothes. Sure. Sure. And so that worked out. But what I found, you know, if you delegate and empower people, and they just took it over. And then they started, because I was also we were getting hygiene items then, you know. And I was just going to the dollar store, and when they took it over, I mean, they were getting a lot better stuff, quality stuff than I was. And then other volunteers started hearing about us. We never went out and recruited anybody. Yeah. And we got a core of about 18, 20 volunteers that normally show up every week. And then we just started expanding. But we can get more into that maybe later next week. But so that's kind of our basis. And
you mentioned next week, so I might as well go ahead and interject real quick. Okay. Next week is the series premiere of my show, which is actually called Little Victories. And it is all about the things that we do with my foundation, Humble Beginnings, and Medicine Wheels, and how I've affected lives here, what I call little victories, whether it's a Cliff Bar or a bike or a tent or tarp or a sleeping bag. Your program provides so many more things. I've been part of that program off and on for the last 2 years now. In the last year, of course, last August, almost a year ago, geez, it's just a couple of days away, believe it or not. It seems like it's just started a few months ago. You know, I went down there and took a look at the resource because I wanted to know exactly what was going on. And Andy didn't show up that day, who was a bike tech. And I said, hey, look, I've got some tools, and off we went. Yeah. And that was the beginning of the strategic partnership between Password Ministries and Humble Beginnings. Yeah. But I took one thing away from that first day that I went there, and that was that this was a huge, huge resource. I mean, from clothing to hygiene to AAA batteries, which, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you know, who thinks about AAA batteries? to socks, to underwear, to ministry, which is important.
Right.
That spiritual health is just as important as the physical health. But
Yeah.
basically, a resource where anybody could come and get whatever they needed to get through the week to survive out there when they're residentially challenged,
Yeah.
or in their substance abuse addiction, whatever that substance may be. And I was really, really just taken aback by the camaraderie and the amount of volunteering and the way that it was so efficient, because it literally sets up like a MASH unit where you guys come in at 8:30 in the morning
Yeah.
and there's nothing there, and then all of a sudden there's 40 volunteers, 50 volunteers, and it all goes up. The eggs are cooking, tater tots are going,
Yeah.
and everybody's just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And then at 10 o'clock, it's all gone, and
Yeah.
there's nothing there except for clients, and that's a
Yeah.
really amazing thing. And
Yeah.
again, one of the things that my foundation did was, try and create this conduit, this ability for people to know about this, because I've been a local my whole life, and I had never really heard about this resource except for through my client base who said, well, I'll be at breakfast in the park. And I'm like, what is that? And they said, it's at, Elistero Park, and it goes on every Saturday at 9 a.m. And so that's just an amazing thing. And you've done so much more. I mean, you have a bike program where you actually were giving away a couple of 2-3 bikes a week, and you've been doing that for how many years now?
About 7.5 years.
Okay.
When we moved across from from Window on the Bay, it wasn't practical. There was so much sand over there, and Window on the Bay, that you couldn't really do any kind of bike repair or anything like that. So when we made our move across the street, we were right on the corner, right across from McDonald's. They're right in the corner, Camino Alistero and Del Monte. And then we started to, a few bikes would show up, and guys needed some help with them. And I'm not really a bike mechanic. And but when some of them started volunteering and helping out and stuff, and we didn't have a bike stand, and there were some bunch of bushes right there when you make that curve where the parking there is. And we had some extra inner tubes, so you just throw the inner tube around the seat, put it over the branch, and there was our bike stand.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it took.
Whatever it takes.
So we just improvised, and then.
Now, Andy came aboard when with you
Well,
guys?
actually, it was Bill before
okay.
Andy.
Okay.
Bill Weller, him and his wife came, and they were in the serving line, and his wife was into serving, and Bill wasn't really that great. He didn't really want to be there serving, but he saw some of the guys over there trying to work on a bike, and one of them, he had the crank was a little bent, and he had a rock, and he was pounding on it. That's all he had.
Sure, yeah.
And Bill says, they need help over there.
Yeah.
So for about 4 years, he worked as my bike mechanic, and he had a passion for bikes. He had a regular job, a business that he had, and but he would come, and then when we packed up and left, he was still there. A lot of times he'd be there almost till noon.
Yeah, I know how that goes. I did it a couple of times myself, where everybody kind of wheeled out, and I was stuck there with 2 or 3 bikes. But
then we started accumulating a whole bunch of parts, and we would get bikes just for parts and stuff. And then one of the street guys, he helped us out and got some dividers, and so everything is organized now. All the nuts and bolts and washers, everything else, and Bill was able to keep all that on, so we still have that. And then we get some donation for bike parts occasionally from some of the local bike shops where they give us a discount and stuff. But most of our bikes just came from word of mouth, and then a lot of times if I speak at a church, then a lot of times we'd get some from private donors. And then we reached out to the police departments, and at first they weren't interested. They had a guy who came in and took all the bikes, and then they went to a different part of the country, and then they would auction them off. And but somehow, I don't remember exactly, but I was able to get in with Seaside, and Betty's is the evidence officer there, and that bicycles fell under her purview, and then she got me into Monterey PD with Alma, and I'm working on Sand City now, and so if you've been there when we've got them, and a lot of times we get maybe 8 to 15.
We picked up 16 the last go around, actually, and that's kind of leads me into the next kind of thing I want to talk about, which is you know, the way that the law enforcement community here treats the disenfranchised, completely different than anything I've seen anywhere else, whether it's Salinas or other parts of the country, just from video. And that is that Monterey PD seems to be very tolerant of what is going on here, you know, and that is, like I said, very rare to see that in the country. And, you know, when you guys are doing breakfast in the park, I think I've only seen law enforcement show up there one time, and they were already looking for the individual based on a bike theft thing or something like that. But
Yeah, we've had to call them at a couple times when something broke out, but occasionally that happens. But
Sure, yeah, but you know, I mean, the thing is, at least they're willing, you know, to be tolerant. Now, there's an individual who was going to be on our show this week, but she couldn't because of prior commitments, and Seal, who I did just see just the other day, who's doing amazing, and I'm looking forward to her being on Little Victories in a couple of weeks. She, you know, was the matriarch of the women's homeless group down there on Alvarado Street, and I met her actually at Pastoral Ministries at the breakfast in the park, and you know, she came up to me and asked me, you know, who I was and how I was involved, and I told her, says, you know, I'm just here looking at the program and what you guys had going on, and she said, you know, they've been doing this amazing job and had nothing but accolades for Password and Breakfast in the Park. And, you know, that interaction, she told me, was, you know, with law enforcement, was the amazing thing was that she had actually gone to them for help with rehab and had approached them and said, I need help. And normally in a big city or in other cities, they would just go, well, you know what, AA is down the way, you know, get to a meeting. They actually facilitated her in going to a rehab program. And then when she relapsed, she went back again, and amazingly enough, they did it again. Now, she apparently went through this 4 times, and each time they put her right back into a program, basically walked her to the doorstep and said, you know, we'll do this. And they said that Officer Collier from Monterey PD said that he would, you know, do that as many times as necessary until it takes. You know, and I said, it definitely is true that it's not the 8 times you fall down, it's the 9 times you get up that counts. And that is a very unusual position for law enforcement to take, and that's why I think that your program has had so much success, and Humble Beginnings and the Medicine Wheels program has had so much success. You know, with law enforcement saying, hey, look, we'll go ahead and donate bikes to your program, whether it was Seaside or Monterey PD or MST now,
we got
which
MST,
we picked up just last November, and MST, Zoe there at MST and people associated with that, that we, you know, but that again, an amazing resource and a way to get great bikes. Speaking of which, the bike in the outside of the frame here now is a bike that we'll be giving to a young lady who just got a new job and is going to be able to get to and from work connecting with the bus. And that's kind of the idea behind Medicine Wheels and your bike program. Originally, it was designed mainly for the homeless to have transportation and the elderly homeless, because if you're 50 or 60 years old and have any kind of medical disability, obviously getting around is going to be a challenge. And that was a great way to facilitate their mobility. What I discovered over a period of time of doing this since August was that why limit it to just the homeless? Why not anybody who's trying to improve the social condition? Anybody who's trying to improve either their social condition or the social condition in general. Single moms who are trying to connect 2 jobs and doing their best to take care of their families. A student who just started college but can't afford a bike, doesn't have any way to connect, again, between, say, a bus and the bike and then school. We just kind of evolved into this. You know, you handed the program over primarily to Medicine Wheels a few months ago, and now it's a 7-day-a-week thing as opposed to just once a day, you know, on Saturdays. And I thank you for that opportunity and Password's, you know, willingness to say, hey, look, let's expand, because that's really what this is all about. I think that we just continue to grow. As you said, you started just, you know, with Kate just handing out bread, and now you're basically servicing the whole Monterey homeless community and providing amazing resources.
Yeah, we've given away 400, with this one, it'll be 432 bikes.
Awesome, yeah. So, and that's over a 7-year period.
Yeah, a little over 7 years.
And and we've seen several of them come back again. And one of the really cool things that has happened as a byproduct of the growth of the bike program is that a month ago when we came down and brought those 3 bikes, we actually couldn't give away. Remember, we had a difficult time giving away the 3rd bike because we actually flooded the market with so many bikes, which is a great thing because that does a couple of things. It reduces theft because they're not stealing from each other anymore, and we know that everybody's got a bike and they can get around. So, that's a win. That's a little victory, as I say.
On Wednesday morning, I gave one away to a gal who had just got a job at a local department store, and she needed a bike.
Sure.
And so right after a breakfast I went to, I met her at Salvation Army at the service center and gave her the bike.
Yeah.
So, but we found that there were a lot of different reasons for bikes.
Sure.
One, like you said, it just makes them more mobile and helps them with a job, and that was important, and we've helped a lot of people right way too to be able to get a job or keep their job. But it's also a lot of them, they have backpacks and stuff,
Right.
and if they can put it on the bike, they don't have to carry it on their back.
Right.
And I always sense that it's a step up, because when you're just on your feet, all you got basically what you got on your back.
Sure.
Those are your possessions. But having a bike now, that gives you mobility.
Yeah.
It also, I just had a sense of they had a new sense of ownership. This is something that they have that sets them a little bit apart now. And if every step up you can bring them, it brings them closer getting back into regular society.
Right.
And so that was kind of the motivation.
Right.
Was to help them in all these different ways. It was more than just simply a bike.
Yeah,
to me.
I can tell you it's
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
I mean, from
Yeah.
firsthand experience,
Yeah.
whether it's being down there on Alvarado Street, in the trenches with these guys, as
Yeah.
they say, and hearing them say, "Hey, man, thanks so much for the bike. Pastor Jim really helped me out because now I've got a way to get around." Or, and sometimes it requires a little more attention. Sometimes they need help with the bike or repair, and sometimes it doesn't even have to do with us giving them a bike. It might be just the fact that they have a bike that just needs some sort of repair.
Yeah.
But you're right, it facilitates them, and it gives them a sense of value, and it gives them a sense of responsibility, which is really, really, the start on that climb upward out of the pit, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah.
And that's huge,
Yeah.
a huge thing. And again, with the other things that you give away, hygiene. You guys give away everything from body wash to deodorant to toothpaste to toothbrush, whatever you can get at the dollar store.
Right.
And I've
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
just racks and racks of stuff come in every single week.
Yeah.
We had the drive with the military. Remember, they brought in some stuff. They brought a few baskets at one time last year, which was really nice to have, a bunch of young 20-somethings in the military, put together a drive to bring stuff down to help as well. So, there's a lot of stuff going on down there, and there are other resources that are available that you've kind of formed strategic partnerships with, and one of those is the One Starfish program, correct?
That we birthed.
Right.
Yeah, that's it's not its own entity. It's part of Pass the Word Ministry,
Okay.
and
What exactly is One Starfish program?
it's a safe parking program.
Okay.
Here on the peninsula, in every community, every city, it's been illegal to sleep in your vehicle overnight.
Sure.
And you normally, especially like if you drive along Ocean View and you go into those little side ones so you can go right next to the coast, and you'll see a sign posted, no parking from like 2 to 5, you know.
Yeah.
That means they can't sleep over there overnight.
Right.
And if they try, the police officer comes and shines a light in there and knocks on the window, and
Sure.
they got to move
Yeah.
and stuff. And Tia Sutton, mainly was her, you might say, baby, her child, that she had did a lot of research on. Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo had already had programs like this. And so she was able to find out how they did their programs, and then we presented it to the different communities here. And each community handled it a little bit differently. But anyway, it ends up now that we have a church parking lot in every community on the peninsula, except for Marina. They aren't technically on the peninsula.
Right.
But we're going to try to work that in.
Sure.
But so now there's a safe place to park at a church. But it's not just, quote unquote, a safe place to go. It's a program to try to help them get out of that out of their vehicle as a quarters, living quarters, to some type of transitional housing,
Sure.
and also a job.
And what's the
And
primary
so-
client base? Is it women? Is it men? Is it?
It's been about 85% women. Right now, it's all 100% women.
Wow.
Occasionally, we get some men. Occasionally, there'd be a husband along with the woman. But right now, it's all women.
And kids are allowed, I'm assuming.
We've had kids, a few, but the vast majority have been single women.
Okay.
So
Who need that safe place to sleep, obviously,
Yeah,
at night, because
yeah.
that's a huge issue. Matter of fact,
Right.
a couple of weeks
and then
ago.
we put a porta potty at the lot, and then we help them with gas cards and try to help with their
Really, gas
repair of
cards?
gas cards, and then we help them to get have some type of health care, and then we've at times put them up in motel rooms when they needed to, if they had a health problem or something like that, and they couldn't be in their cold vehicle and stuff.
I'm sure. I'm
so-
assuming that's on a case-by-case basis. Then,
Yeah,
You know, which
right,
which is a great thing, because all of a sudden you're not stuck in that pigeonholed.
Right.
What's your base salary? You're
Yeah.
you're ceilinged out at 12,000, say,
Yeah,
for example,
yeah.
by social services, and that's that gap that
Mhm.
needs to be filled, I
Yeah,
think, and
right.
is important.
Right. And we have a caseworker who does the intake with the guest, and then works with them and counseling them and stuff like this, so they can.
So there is a vetting process then.
Right, very definitely, right.
Okay.
And we have preference on those who are already been residents, because there is a big population out there of homeless women, and occasionally we've had some who've come moving in, but from an outside area, but normally it's just basically for those who have already been here
Been here
and are
and
homeless.
Now, obviously, it requires some form of ID. What are the basic requirements? Say, I were to show up at the parking lot or the program.
We do a background check on them.
Mhm.
We ask for references,
Mhm.
and then we do a thorough backup check
Right.
and stuff and everything. And so there is a vetting process.
Right.
Not everybody who applies is going to get in.
Right.
And also, when they hear it's not just a safe place to go and park, but there's a whole process here. That a lot of them, that's not what they wanted. They just
Right.
wanted a
They just wanted
safe
a place to park, yeah.
So it kind of eliminates some.
Right.
You know.
Now that's a funny thing you say that, because that's one of the byproducts of, like, say, the iHelp program, with 25 available beds and only having a 16 to 18 average occupancy, and that's because they're a substance-free program, and a lot of clients of mine aren't willing to give up their addiction to take advantage of a resource like that.
Yeah.
And that leads me back to what you said about the safe place for them to be, because we were talking 2 weeks ago on Resistance TV about a couple who had a pit bull, who had a dog, who couldn't access a shelter because they had this
Right.
dog.
Yeah.
And we don't have a resource, and there aren't many in the country, I believe, that have a resource where you can bring your pet and use that shelter.
Yeah.
And so this would actually eliminate one of those challenges for this couple, because they wouldn't have to worry about being safe again. Now they could put their dog in a
Yeah,
kennel.
a
rather than
lot of
playing
the
with
women have dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
huge pet population in the homeless community. I've noticed that, and that's,
Yeah.
I think, goes back to that bike issue that we talked about.
It's also like an extra pair of eyes at night.
Sure.
The dog senses maybe before
Yeah.
the person does.
Oh, yeah.
If there's somebody out there or something.
Sure. Absolutely.
But we also have a lots monitor who goes around to the different church locations and checks up on them.
Wow.
And so so it's two people, and then I'm the part-time executive director for it. So
Nice. Yeah, and then the other resource that I know of on the peninsula that you don't have a lot to do with, but for the women, and I want to touch on the women's community because that was what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is the Gathering for Women, and now the iHelp program is, I guess,
Yeah,
back in effect,
right, for women. Yeah.
which is great to have those resources available as well.
That they did have a challenge, like we were just saying, with dogs, because the churches can't take the dogs in.
Sure, yeah.
So that kind of put a limit on some of the women who could get into that program. We have a monthly meeting normally at First Press Monterey of the different agencies, and so we kind of share what's going on, and so we have a better idea of who does what and stuff.
So,
and so
real quick, just I don't want to stop the flow here, but what is the time, and is it open to the public to come, or other resources to come to this, or is this something
Not
that's
to the
just
public, but for other resources.
other resources,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's usually like the third Monday of the month, and it's from roughly 1 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just
It won't
figured
be
since you-
happening in
yeah.
August, but
Yeah, well,
yeah.
you know, with other resources, I mean, other resources out there, you know, that might want to be a part of this
Yeah.
and part of the solution.
Right.
Again, my primary goal of Humble Beginnings is to connect and form these bridges, because I found in 6 years of doing this that that's the biggest problem, is that we just don't have the awareness, and awareness is key here, because if iHelp doesn't know that Password is doing breakfast in the park, then they can't tell a client, hey, look, I know you're hungry and I know you need some, you know, hygiene or whatever, you know, good luck. Whereas if they knew that, they can say, hey, look, make sure you're there at 9 o'clock. And then we've created a network of local resources, which we're kind of shooting for. The other thing I want to touch on was, you know, and this is a call out to everybody out there who is here on the peninsula who might be interested in something like this. You know, the dog problem, the pet problem with resources that are out there, is that I truly believe that there's somebody out there, some pet lover out here on the peninsula who is willing to say, you know what, I'd be willing to take, say, maybe 10 kennel cages and allow these clients to come and bring their pets so that they can take advantage of a local, you know, shelter, maybe iHelp, or the ones, you know, not so much the Starfish program, because obviously they don't have a problem because the pet's in their car with them,
Right,
correct?
right,
So that's
right,
not an issue.
right,
But
yeah.
that's one of the things that I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks since I watched the couple that had that issue, and I thought, you know, if we can have a shelter for, you know, the humans, why can't we have a shelter for their pets? And so hopefully somebody's watching this and sees it and
might
says,
come up
hey,
with an
look, you know
idea.
what?
Right.
And we'll get your contact information out before, you know, we stop the show today. That way people might be able to contact you, or they can contact me at Humble Beginnings.
Okay.
We'll give all that information at the end of the show. You know, one of the other things that we talked about a while back was the fact that, you know, funding is always an issue with resources like this, because you're not a Salvation Army, you're not Goodwill, you're not any huge, you know, 501c3. You guys have managed to do this pretty much on your own backs with just very little outside, you know, funding. I mean, you've got some grants and stuff, but we talked last year about how you guys had lost a really big grant, and I think it's terrible that, you know, we're cutting, you know, funding to these kind of programs. But how are you guys set now, and what does the future look like for you?
We are in need of finding some grants. We hadn't found anything for a year now. Actually, been about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And so it's basically been supporters who contribute, which we still appreciate and we still need.
Right.
Very much so. We got a couple churches who have been faithfully giving us like a missions. That we're part of a local mission instead of an overseas mission, that they support us.
Sure.
And then that's basically where we're at.
Right.
You know? And then like today, I was just sending out letters. We try to do it 4 times a year, and to our supporters. And our coffers are pretty low right now, and so we needed to.
Well, Creator will provide, right? At some point.
And we also, you know, we've given out. How many I had here? 35 tents and 37 sleeping bags, and we buy them. You know, I get them on sale usually at Big 5, occasionally Sears, but usually Big 5. And most of the time, the sleeping bags and stuff are like $70 or $80 sleeping bags, but you know, you get them for 30 on sale.
Right. Sure. Yeah, but you guys do that all yourself.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I know we've
and
had
that
that
just that
conversation
alone
as well.
is over $2,000.
Yeah.
You know, so if anybody has some sleeping bags that they aren't using anymore and they're in good shape, we will take donations of sleeping bags. In tents, we don't need big tents. Usually a single person or a 2-person tent. A big tent draws too much attention.
Right.
And it's hard to pack for a person on the street. So a simple little
Dome tent type, or bivouac, they call them, I believe.
So if you have one of those, or bikes, we don't need children's bikes, but basically mountain bikes, 26 inches or 24.
Right.
That's predominantly it's the 26-inch mountain bikes that we deal with, and
That's the most popular, what they
Yeah.
call fast mover, I guess,
Yeah,
you know, in the
yeah. So,
thing. So, you know,
yeah.
I'm just absolutely amazed by what
Yeah.
you guys do
Yeah.
every time.
We
I
also
see it.
give out propane and little camp stoves too.
Right.
Single
Yeah.
burner camp stoves. you
Yeah.
know, so. And then pet food, dog and cat food, and so we try to meet all their needs.
Yeah,
all their
how many
needs.
pounds of pet food are you guys giving away these days? Because I'll tell you what, I went down there, like I said, 3 weeks ago, and I was absolutely amazed. Kate was handing it out, as a matter of fact, as usual.
Yeah.
Big Ziploc bags full of this stuff, and she had quite
Yeah.
a few. So.
She's gone this week, and so I've been scooping out 5 scoops into a big gallon bag. So I don't know how much actually it weighs, but it fills up almost probably about a half
So
a
you
gallon.
take donations of dog food as well, and stuff like
yeah,
that. Cat
yeah.
food is necessary, or not
Yes,
so much?
we a lot of times do cat food.
Yeah, because I know there's a couple of clients with cats down there as well. And,
Yeah,
and
not as
again,
many
these
as
pets are a
dogs,
huge part of their life, because they're, for some of these, you know, clients, they're basically, you know, they're not big on people because for some reason, whatever it may be, mental illness or their addiction, they don't want to be around other people, and so the pet becomes their companion. And so it's really important for them to maintain their, you know, what sanity that they have left, and that doesn't mean that that pet should suffer, that they should have to give it up because they can't afford. I've actually watched, and this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, is I watched a client sitting out in front of Round Table one night with his dog, and he was, you know, telling his buddy how hungry they were, and they were trying to get something, and the guy came out and gave him a couple of pieces of pizza, and this guy gave that pizza to the pet before he even ate, and was hoping that somebody else would come along and give him something. But that's how, I mean, you don't see that in regular mainstream society. I know people that will actually, you know, well, the dog's going to have to do without tonight because we're going to eat, whereas, you know, some of my clients are just so empathetic and so amazing. You just
very
don't
strong bond there.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, you know, and so, you know, we have to figure out some way to facilitate that population as well, because it's a part of their well-being as a client who's already been defeated, who's been pushed down as far as they could possibly go in society, and has managed to turn around and pick themselves up and found this pet or whatever, and now is moving upward, you know. And again, like you said, it gives them a sense of responsibility, it gives them a sense of value, something that they can care about. These things all kind of go into the getting back into mainstream society.
A companion, and then somebody who loves them unconditionally.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly, and that's sometimes that's what they need, because no one else, you know, families turn their back on them, and sometimes that's a byproduct of substance abuse. Now, in your 7.5 years of doing this,
little over 8 years.
What? Yeah, a little over 8 years, right? What is your as far as substance abuse goes? What have you seen? What is the biggest change you've seen in the last 8 years from when you started this to where we are today? And what do you believe is the biggest problem in substance abuse here on the peninsula?
Well, when we started in 2009, that's when the recession was.
Right.
So there were some people who had never been on the street before who are now all of a sudden on the street. And so you didn't see the substance abuse with them.
Right.
And they just needed a hand up. I mean, it was, well, that's where a bike really made a difference. Or taking them to Yellow Brick Road and get some good clothes so they could interview for a job. Or they just said they got a job, but they needed some work clothes, you know. And so stuff like that made a big difference. But as those people were moved up and went on back onto, you might say, a typical life, there were more and more who we were getting who do have some type of addiction or mental illness or something. And that's really, I think that as a society, we have really failed in that regards, that we don't do more for them, especially those who have mental illness and stuff. You know, putting them out on the street is not the answer. And we need to be doing something better for them. I know some of those mental institutions were pretty bad, but if you could regulate them properly, I think it'd be much better than, and then try to help cure. A lot of them can be cured too and stuff, but just letting them out on the street It's terrible, and we're going to be convicted for that
Yeah.
as a society.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
thank
as a
God
nation.
you're around and resources like
Yeah.
yours are here
Yeah.
because.
Well, I don't
man,
claim to be any kind of expert, you
Right.
know, in those areas,
Right.
but we just try to give them love and respect.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
and acknowledge them as who they are, and we're going to provide as best we can for some of their needs. We can't do everything, but we're going to feed them and clothe them and give them a tent and a sleeping bag if they need it. You know.
I have to honestly say I've never seen anyone turned away or refused any kind of services from Pastorwood, from the breakfast in the park, or whether it's a camping stove or a tent or something as simple as toothpaste. Everybody has been welcome, and your ministry.
We have waiting lists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we try to get to them.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, at least you're there. And the thing is, with the waiting list, I think you end up with the byproduct of them going, okay, I'll see you next week, and they come back.
Right.
And then you guys always seem to be able to, find a way to make it happen. And that's.
I normally bring 2 tents and 2 sleeping bags and 4 tarps, and we go through that almost every time, and then usually 5 or 6 bike locks. And we found out early you don't give a bike away without a lock.
Right, right. Yeah. Otherwise, it ends up in evidence with Alma again, all over again, and it goes through the revolving door. So that's not acceptable.
Yeah, that's about $10 for the lock and the cable.
Right.
We're giving away 432, so that's $4,230 just for locks and cables.
Yeah, but well worth it because I mean, look at the end of the day, you've given somebody that ability to be mobile and move up in society again as opposed to down, because without that bike, for some of them, it's, I mean, I deal with these guys all the time.
You're the bike guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great being out there with them and seeing it and hearing them say, you have no idea how much it's going to change my life, and being able to say, I do. I totally get what you're saying, and watching them blossom from, unemployment or no education to having them come to me and say a year later, man, look, I'm still in school, I still got the bike, and it's not always that way. Unfortunately, we don't always have that success. But I would say the vast majority of the time we do. It's a small percentage that either the bike becomes a commodity or it becomes it gets stolen. And we found a way to solve that problem with, like I said, with the commodities and stuff like that, which was the way that we funded the program and the way that the program has stayed viable now, which is to just not those nicer bikes, by selling them and taking those proceeds. Guess what? Now we've got expendables. Now we've got tubes and cables and what we need, and we have a great store credit at Rooster Wheels over in Marina where anything we need.
They gave me a whole bunch of used tires a couple weeks ago.
Oh, awesome! Yeah.
So now I got some. We're almost out of 26-inch.
I actually apologize because I was supposed to actually pick some up, maybe a month ago, and it just, as you said that, it dawned on me, and so, my bad. Things are happening. Well, we're changing so many lives. I mean, your resource, One Starfish, the Gathering, I Help, all of these resources we have on the peninsula. I truly believe this is one of the best micromanaged communities for helping the disenfranchised.
I might want to just mention on iHelp.
Sure.
I know I have some friends who are on that board, and they're hurting for funding too, and so they need some additional assistance too. It's a great program. It's been going on for I think over 20 years.
Yeah.
Our church, Cypress, where I attend, I'm not the pastor there, but I attend there. That's a very popular spot for them because we have a gymnasium.
Right. Yeah.
And so then they have showers and stuff too. And so, but it's been a great program, and it's nice to see all the churches helping out that way. Yeah. And also now, like you said, they have it for the women too.
Yeah.
And so,
I embedded myself in that program. Oh God, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, and spent about almost 15 days. It was a little over 2 weeks, I remember, and it was right around Christmas time because everybody said, I kept hearing from my clients, this is the best time of year to be in the iHelp program. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, it's Christmas time. And so they said, you got to check it out. So I, like the 2nd of December, I went and I signed up for the program and acted like a regular client and went into it. And that night we went to Castroville, the church that they have out in Castroville at that time.
I know they went that far.
Yeah, and it was one of those, and and they're going, this is the best night of the year right here. And they gave away $20 gift cards for McDonald's, a $10 gift card for, I believe it was Wendy's, a brand new jacket, a brand new sleeping bag, shoes, and the food was amazing. I mean, it was just this great little Christmas kind of party celebration. And it was like that from that day until the end of the month. It went on continuously. And that, again, you know, that kind of resource, we can't afford to have that go away, because what they get in that month for themselves to get through the rest of the year is important, because now they don't have to rely so much on your ministry or your program or any of the other local programs to deal with a lot of that stuff, because they get it one time a year. And stuff like jackets, you know, those they keep for a long time, and they last about a year. There's a little known story about one of the people that donates jackets to the iHelp program is a store that I believe is still on Fisherman's Wharf. And for every jacket that he sells, he actually donates a jacket to iHelp.
Really?
During the winter time. So, you know, those are the kind of things that, little victories, again, next week when we do this show, we'll talk about those kind of stories and those kind of people and the resources and how people in this community really do care, how they want to help. You know, again, I've seen it firsthand in your program where, you know, 40 or 50 people show up, and I've had people ask how they can be a part of that. And you guys just never seem to have a shortage of people wanting to help, which is great. And I'm assuming that's from the longevity of the program being around for 8 years, but also, you know, just an amazing community who wants to help.
Yeah, kind of like our name says, you know, I haven't gone out and recruited anybody.
Right.
There's times I've had to call and say, hey, can you make sure maybe bring a friend or something, when we know during the summer months it gets a little lower than normal. And but otherwise, I mean, it's just people are passing the word. You know, I mean, literally, you know. And so the street people pass the word and where it's at, and then our volunteers.
So what does the future look like for Pass the Word Ministries? I mean, where do you see it kind of?
Well, I'd like to be able to retire in about a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
I'm a novelist. I just finished my second book, and it's on Genesis, Adam to Noah, and I wrote on Noah and his flood for my first book, and so I really feel a calling to write, and so I do want to be able. I got a blog I'm starting, and so you got to get a following. You know? So, but I really want to write more, and Judy and I, you know, this. By the time I do retire, Judy and I will be like 10 years.
Wow.
And we're both getting a little worn out.
Now, do you plan on handing this over to somebody else? And
That's what I'm hoping to. Okay. I don't see.
Do you have anybody in mind yet? I mean, has Creator and His ever-loving wisdom given you a person? Because unfortunately, I'm not that guy. I try to maintain, like I said, my ability to just be the conduit between client and research. That's the key for me.
I would like to, well, maybe we can share that in the next time, because I do have a vision for some more things we'd like to expand on, you know, that are needed here, I think. And then if we have like a building or two, well, then more likely we could get a more typical director.
As opposed to. Well, I remember when we started, like when I started with your bike project or with your bike program, you know, I mean, you literally said, you know, I've got a little place out in the back of my house that I got set up, and it turned out to be a little bit more than just a little place, but I mean, you were willing to open up, you know, your own home to this community, which I applaud you for.
That's the reason we bought the house, is for the back house.
Unfortunately, Judy didn't approve of the fact that we turned it into a bike shop. Well, again, you know, I applaud you for doing that, though, and I'm sure there are more people out there that want to do something like this, and you know, hopefully we can figure out how to you know, continue this journey. It's an amazing resource. You know, the only other really question I think that people are asking is, you know, how do I help? What do you suggest to the average person who says, what can I do? How can I help?
Well, you can do it financially. And you could also come down on a Saturday morning. We're normally at the El Estero picnic area where the barbecue pits are.
Mhm.
But if that's reserved, like this week, tomorrow, and the following week, somebody's already reserved them, so we'll be over by the cemetery parking, right across from Dennis to Menace parking, just down a little bit down the road.
Okay.
And just come and see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something there that you could bring. I have one guy he's like in his 90s. I have a breakfast with him once a month, and he has a nursery, and it's a lot of times he brings fruit and
Wow.
stuff, you
Mhm.
know, and that's how he helps out.
Right.
And so it's, if you have, like, if you have sleeping bags or tents, we can always use them. You
Right.
have some bikes that are usable.
What about
bring 'em.
just, and again, I'm just having a kind of a flashback to 2 weeks ago. Now, there was an issue that was brought up about the women's homeless population. Obviously, we've gained 6% in the last year here on the peninsula alone. There was an issue, a question. One of the resources and one of the things that wasn't donated and is a problem is women's feminine hygiene products. I honestly have to say, I think I've only seen them there a few times in the line when they give the hygiene
The
show.
Ark and the Park, I believe, bring that.
Okay.
And they come once a month.
Because if people wanted to bring
The
something
last-
like
the
this,
last one.
I just want people to think outside the
Yeah.
box as
Yeah.
opposed to, hey, look, they need
Yeah.
shoes, they need
Yeah.
shirts,
Yeah.
they need, body wash and deodorant.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things, again, AAA batteries, for example, feminine hygiene products, whatever they may be.
We had a couple hair cutters for a while.
Right.
Uh,
Karen, I remember her
yeah,
well.
Yeah, one was a military dependent, and then her husband got transferred. They had to leave, and then Karen had been there. So yeah, if we had another hair cutter, that would be great.
Yeah.
The people just really loved her, the
Yeah.
both of them, for doing that.
Yeah,
you
oh,
know.
come on, you were getting an $80 hair. She was a Pebble
Yeah,
Beach stylist,
I
which I
know.
found amazing.
Yeah.
Here these guys are, getting an $80 haircut.
Yeah.
I actually quit using my stylist and started coming to her. I'm sure you remember once a month I'd come and I was like, why am I going and spending money on a haircut when I
Yeah.
could buy something for,
Yeah.
the program?
And then we've had people who helped out with AA.
Mm-hmm.
But that lasted only a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But they would meet after us and meet right there in the park,
Right.
So we could use something like that again,
Yeah.
if somebody so implied, that they would do that. We had a pharmacist, and his kids come for 2 or 3 years, bringing medications and stuff that they had, and mainly over-the-counter things,
Right, sure.
And so we've had a lot of different supports. We've had doctors come at times and nurses, and then we could use more of that.
Now, what about the veterans population? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of veterans here on the Peninsula. The Veteran Transition Center is doing an amazing job over in Marina, and they've done a lot. A client from that program was actually scheduled to be here, but some things came up and couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But what have you seen in, say, the veterans population as far as the client base down there coming to the breakfast in the park on Saturdays? And have you seen it increase or decrease?
We
since?
don't see too many veterans.
Mhm.
I think we did earlier on,
Mhm.
but most of our regular guys are not.
Mm-hmm.
But I had contact with Terry Bear when he was executive director there,
Okay.
and they're doing a great job there at Veteran Transition, and they've been also, I think, parts of the old Fort Ord are doing a good job of making housing available.
Right.
To the veterans. It'd be nice if we can get something like that for the community. And that's what I was working with him. I was trying to get some Quonset hut type
Right.
housing. And so I maybe I'll eventually meet the new director
Right,
here. That would be
yeah.
nice, and we could pursue that a little more.
Well, I think we talked about that a while back too, about the different options in temporary or housing for clients that wasn't conventional. Let's say, there's some stuff that's available as far as transitional or emergency shelters that are basically made out of pallets and corrugated plastic type of structures. Also, there's some other technology now that's available, like inflatable, where you just shoot gunite concrete on them and
That's
make
what you're
these
saying,
very
yeah.
reasonable,
Yeah.
priced shelters that all it's going to take is somebody with, say, a fallow lot who's willing to say, you know what, I've had enough. And this is one of the things that we just chatted about just in the last probably 72 hours about the fact that that's the huge issue here on the peninsula is that nobody wants it in their backyard.
Right.
You know, nobody's willing. I've watched and attended several city council meetings and talked with mayors, and you know, they all say the same thing. We want to do something, but nobody wants it in their backyard. You know, the pepperoni pizza solution, which is to slice it up and put a piece of pepperoni in different parts of the community because it wouldn't be central. And the biggest challenge is the fact that we just can't find a location to put these, you know, clients who are, you know, if we did have a facility like this, we would be able to actually, you know, monitor that with like the lot volunteers that you have for, like, say, the One Starfish program. I mean, if we can do it with vehicles, why can't we do it in a more permanent setting, or especially with, say, a fallow lot that's just been sitting for years, and somebody may just want to say, you know, one day, hey, look, you know what, here, go ahead and do it. What do you think the possibilities are for something like that to happen here on the peninsula?
I think there's potential if they're willing to do it. We were looking to get a gentleman from Utah who was a Ford executive and got into small housing in Utah. And they found that it actually is much cheaper for all the different services that you provide through emergency services at the hospital and whatever, that when you actually had a house for them, it would cost you a lot less than what you're putting out piecemeal, like Band-Aids. And so we'd like to be able to get the gentleman to come, and we could then maybe get several different organizations interested in looking into something like this. And we'd like to be able to tap into Fort Ord area if we can.
Well, there's the call. I mean, you're sending out the call right now. So this is no better forum than what we've got today. And here's
we want to try to do more than just do what we're doing, meet their immediate needs, but we want to be able to transition and get more and more off the street altogether into some type of housing. And cost of housing around here, as you probably know, is really high, and so we need to do something that's unconventional. With small houses.
Well, think outside the box.
Right.
As a friend told me one time. Okay, so here we are, pretty much at the end of the show now. I think the most important thing is finding, how do people reach out to Pastoral Ministries? How do they contact you? Is there a number or an email address that you want to share with them?
We have a P.O. box. It's 2394 in Monterey, 93942. And if they want to send a check, it's just Pass the Word Ministry. We do have a website. It's Pass the Word Ministry, and you can .com, and you can go to that. And that's something we could use. I'm not good at that kind of stuff.
Website design. Yeah, me neither. Technology scares the heck out of me.
We have it that was set up, but we need somebody who could really maintain that for us. We have a lot of photos, and we now, you know, every time we give away a bike, we take a picture of the person receiving the bike, and we log it in. You know, that's what I brought this for.
Right, exactly. We're going to be giving that one away here shortly. Okay.
So, but anyway, so if there's somebody who would like to do that, or also Facebook, you know, we got a Facebook page. And
what's the title of the page?
Just Pass the Word.
Just Pass the Word.
So,
great. Well, you know, thanks so much for being here today. I mean, really appreciate it. It was pretty short notice. We kind of tossed in this thing, but you know, I think we've gotten some good information out there, and people who want to reach out to us, please feel free to reach out to us here at, you know, Pass the Word Ministries or my foundation, Humble Beginnings. The phone number is 831-225-2612. The email address is humble1831@gmail.com. One other thing, I'd like to thank Wave Street Live and Wave Street Studios for giving us this forum and the ability to share, you know, this information and get people to be aware of what the needs are of the community. Because this is our community, no matter how you slice it. We've all been here a long time. I've been here my whole life. So, you know, it's important that we continue to foster what we have here already. And, You know, thanks again for being on, and we're looking forward to next week. We're going to
Okay.
do this actually one more time, but now you're maybe a little less apprehensive, and,
Yeah.
and we'll just, it's been a great time talking with you,
Okay.
and yeah, we're at the end of this journey, and we'll see you next week on the 28th at 11 a.m. here on Wave Street Live. Little Victories is the name of the show, and we're looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.
Okay.